The Vraxis Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries, their iron fleet casting long shadows over countless worlds, enforcing laws made in darkness and fear. No one dared to speak openly against them, and those who tried disappeared without a trace. On the remote mining colony of Viridian 7, far from the bustling core of human space, life went on quietly under the Dominion's watchful eye. Among the dusty plains and rocky hills lived Eli, a curious and bright-eyed boy who knew nothing of the galaxy's cruel politics. His days were filled with chasing small machines and listening to his father's stories about Earth, a place he had never seen but dreamed about. But all that peace shattered the day the Dominion's enforcers arrived, their black ships blotting out the sun like vultures descending on prey. They claimed there had been a smuggling ring hiding on Viridian 7, a threat to their control, and demanded immediate inspections. The colony's leaders cooperated, hoping to avoid trouble, but tension hung thick in the air as armed soldiers swept through homes and factories, their cold eyes searching for anything that might undermine their rule. Eli watched from the window, clutching a small wooden toy his mother had carved, when the soldiers forced their way into his family's home. His father tried to speak calmly, but fear crept into his voice as the soldiers questioned them harshly, accusing his father of hiding illegal tech. Eli's mother held him close, whispering reassurances he didn't feel. Suddenly, a soldier's helmet cracked against the wall, and chaos erupted. In the confusion, a stray energy blast fired by a nervous recruit hit Eli's leg, sending him screaming to the floor. His mother's cry echoed through the room as the soldiers backed away, the harsh light of their weapons cutting through the dust. The colony fell silent afterward, the usual hum of machinery replaced by a heavy stillness. The enforcers left quickly, leaving behind a wounded child and broken families. Word spread fast. This was no accident, but a message from the Dominion. Obedience was mandatory, and even children were not safe if their people dared to resist. In the shadows, human miners and workers who once bowed their heads now clenched their fists, their anger slowly turning to defiance. Eli's injury had ignited a spark, one that the Dominion had not planned, for a spark that would soon grow into a fire threatening to consume their empire. News of what happened to Eli spread quickly through the human colonies like wildfire, carried by whispers, secret messages, and coded signals across star systems. For years, the humans had been treated like second-class citizens in the Dominion's vast empire, scattered and frightened, never bold enough to fight back openly. But the story of a small boy hurt by the Dominion's cold hand touched something deep inside their hearts. It was a symbol of everything they had suffered, and a sign that maybe, just maybe, they did not have to live under fear forever. Across the colonies, secret meetings began to form in hidden rooms and underground tunnels. Miners, traders, engineers, and soldiers, all those who had suffered in silence, started to come together, sharing stories, plans, and hope. They spoke of resistance, of taking back their freedom, but most of all, they talked about protecting children like Eli from a future ruled by cruelty. Eli's family, still struggling with his injury, found themselves at the center of this growing unrest. His father, once a quiet man focused on work and survival, now spoke boldly in secret gatherings, urging others to stand strong. His mother, whose hands had always been gentle and caring, now carried a fire in her eyes that no fear could dim. Yet, the Dominion was not blind to the shifting winds. Its leaders tightened their grip, sending more patrols to crush any sign of rebellion. At Viridian 7, soldiers prowled the streets day and night, watching, listening, ready to strike before defiance could spread further. The colony's air grew thick with tension, every glance and whisper charged with suspicion. But even as the Dominion tried to silence hope, the spark they had ignited only grew brighter. Small acts of rebellion began to ripple through the stars, a stolen ship here, a sabotaged weapon there. Messages of encouragement passed between plants like sparks in the dark. And Eli, recovering slowly, listened to the stories brought to his home by visitors, who saw him as more than a wounded child. They saw him as a symbol, a sign that the human spirit could not be broken. He learned about courage, about standing up for what was right, and though he was still young, he felt something grow inside him, a determination that one day he would help change the stars forever. But the Dominion, desperate to crush this rising threat, prepared a plan that would either end the rebellion before it began or push the humans to the edge of war. Their eyes were on Viridian 7, and they knew that the next move could decide the fate of many worlds. Suspense filled the air as the quiet colony held its breath, waiting for the moment when fear would collide with defiance and the future of humanity would be tested in ways no one could yet imagine. The days that followed, the Dominion's harsh warning on Viridian 7 were unlike any the colony had seen before. The miners, workers, and families who once bowed their heads in silence now moved with a quiet purpose. Small groups met in hidden places, deep tunnels, abandoned factories, and even under the vast open sky where the stars shone like silent witnesses. Eli, still healing but growing stronger each day, watched from his window as the colony changed. His injury, once a symbol of pain and fear, had become a symbol of hope and resistance. The humans were no longer willing to live in the Dominion's shadow. Across the nearby systems, messages arrived from other colonies, words of encouragement, offers of help, and plans for coordinated actions. Human pilots shared secret routes through asteroid fields. Engineers passed along designs for weapons hidden in everyday machines, and soldiers trained in the arts of guerrilla warfare began to gather quietly in the dark. The Dominion responded with increased patrols and brutal crackdowns, but the humans had learned to be faster, smarter, and harder to catch. Each time the Dominion ships arrived, they found empty bases or traps waiting for them. Eli's family was at the heart of this growing fire, and though his legs still ached, his spirit burned brighter. The boy who had been hurt had become a symbol of strength, and his courage inspired others to believe they could fight back. In secret, Eli began to learn the ways of leadership from those around him, how to listen, how to plan, and how to stand firm even when hope seemed thin. Rumors spread that other species oppressed by the Dominion were watching the human rebellion with interest, some even sending covert support. The galaxy, once silent under the Dominion's rule, now hummed with the promise of change. Tensions mounted when a surprise attack by human rebels crippled a Dominion supply convoy, shaking the Dominion's belief in their invincibility. The Dominion's leaders, enraged and frightened, vowed to crush the uprising before it spread beyond control. They sent elite forces to Viridian 7, hoping to capture or kill the leaders of the resistance. But the humans, prepared and united, met them head-on, fighting with a fierce determination that the Dominion had never seen before. Battles broke out not just in space, but on the surface, where the landscape itself became a weapon against the better-armed Dominion soldiers. The humans used the rocky terrain, hidden tunnels, and improvised weapons to outmaneuver their enemies. Eli, though still young, stood among the fighters, his eyes filled with the fierce light of those who know they have something precious to defend. The Dominion's rule, built on fear and strength, began to crack like fragile ice under the weight of human courage. With every victory, no matter how small, the humans rose higher, their hope growing like a fire that would not be put out. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see if the rising from ashes would become the dawn of a new era, one where humans would no longer hide but stand tall among the rulers of the galaxy. The war between the humans and the Viraxis Dominion grew fiercer and more desperate with every passing day, and what had once seemed impossible began to change. The humans, who had been scattered and afraid, had found strength in their unity and sharp minds, turning every battle into a lesson in survival and strategy. Eli, now older and wiser beyond his years, had become a key figure among the rebels, his courage and quick thinking earning him respect from every corner of the rebellion. His leg, once crippled by injury, no longer slowed him down. It was a reminder of the pain the Dominion had caused, but also a symbol of human resilience. The Dominion's commanders underestimated the humans, thinking their fear would always keep them in line. But that fear had been replaced by something far more dangerous: hope and anger. Human ships darted through asteroid belts and nebulae, striking Dominion supply lines with precision and vanishing before enemy fleets could respond. The humans had learned to use their environment as a weapon, turning familiar worlds into battlegrounds where the Dominion's larger forces were slowed down and vulnerable. Other oppressed species, once hidden and silent, began to emerge from the shadows, forming unexpected alliances with the humans. Together, they shared knowledge, technology, and courage, creating a force the Dominion had not prepared for. The Dominion's leaders grew frantic, sending more troops, more ships, more weapons, but each attack was met with fierce resistance and clever traps. At the heart of the rebellion, Eli worked tirelessly, inspiring his people to believe that victory was possible. He spoke of freedom and justice, reminding them that they fought not just for themselves, but for all those who had suffered under the Dominion's rule. The turning point came during a massive battle near the planet Nerea, where the Dominion had gathered a fleet to crush the growing rebellion once and for all. The humans, though outnumbered and outgunned, had planned a surprise assault using stolen Dominion ships and advanced tactics. In the thick of battle, Eli led a daring strike team through enemy lines, targeting the Dominion's command ship. The fight was brutal, with explosions lighting up the dark space and the roar of engines filling the void. But Eli's team reached the heart of the enemy's fleet, disabling the command ship's defenses and sending shockwaves through the Dominion forces. The victory at Nerea sent shockwaves across the galaxy, turning once silent worlds into centers of rebellion and hope. The Dominion, once feared as unstoppable, now faced a challenge that threatened their very existence. Yet even as the tide turned, Eli and the rebels knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion's pride was shattered, but their will to fight remained fierce. The galaxy stood on the edge of a new era, where humans and their allies would either rise as the defenders of freedom or be crushed under the weight of an empire unwilling to fall. Suspense gripped every corner of space as forces prepared for the battles to come, knowing that the next moves would shape the destiny of stars, and the spirit of humanity would be tested like never before. The final battle for the fate of the galaxy loomed like a dark storm on the horizon, and every soul in the human rebellion knew that what they were about to face could decide the future of countless worlds. Eli, now a young man shaped by years of hardship, loss, and victory, stood among the leaders of the united forces gathered near the Dominion's capital world, Zereth. The city that had once been the symbol of terror and control now faced the fury of those it had oppressed for so long. Across the fleet, the ships of humans and their allies moved with purpose, their crews steeling themselves for the fight ahead. The Dominion had not given up. Their war machines were ready, their soldiers hungry for revenge, but the fear that had once ruled them was now in the hearts of their enemies. The air was thick with tension as both sides prepared for a battle that could stretch through space and ground alike. Eli's thoughts returned to the beginning, his childhood on Viridian 7, the injury that sparked the rebellion, and the countless lives lost and saved along the way. He felt the weight of that history on his shoulders, but also the strength of the hope that burned in every heart fighting beside him. As the first shots rang out, the battle exploded into chaos. Starfighters danced through laser fire, capital ships exchanged thunderous volleys, and on Zereth's surface, soldiers clashed in fierce hand-to-hand combat. Eli led a strike team tasked with breaking through the Dominion's last defensive line to reach the command center, the nerve hub controlling the enemy's fleet and armies. Every step forward was met with resistance, every corner held by soldiers desperate to protect their crumbling empire. The rebels fought with desperation and skill, their resolve hardened by years of struggle. Inside the command center, the Dominion's leader, Supreme Warlord Karek, watched the battle unfold with growing fury and disbelief. His power, built on fear and domination, was slipping away. When Eli and his team finally breached the command center's core, a tense showdown erupted between the young human and Karek himself. Words were exchanged, words heavy with the pain of oppression and the promise of change. In that moment, Eli saw not just an enemy, but the final barrier between the galaxy's past and its future. The fight was fierce but brief, with courage and the help of his team. Across the stars, the Dominion's forces faltered, their coordination broken, their will to fight crumbling. As the dust settled and silence replaced the roar of battle, the humans and their allies stood victorious. The stars, once ruled by fear, were now theirs to protect. Eli looked up at the sky, knowing this was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter 1 where freedom would be guarded and the horrors of tyranny never allowed to return. The story of a wounded child had become the legend of a people who refused to bow, proving that even in the darkest times, hope and courage could reclaim the stars.